Welcome to the Three Padres and a Shepherd Podcast, where three North Dakota Lutheran pastors and a real-life shepherd combine serious theology with fun laughter. This is a podcast from the local church and for the local church. However, the local churches of these three pastors do not take any responsibility for the banter, foolery, and assertions that will follow. Welcome to the Three Padres and a Shepherd Podcast.
Good enough.
Yeah, I was going to say, did that drop out on the recording, or is that just in our audio?
What's going on?
We lost the song for like 5 seconds.
Oh no, I still hear. Shoot,
Transhumanist.
No, we don't.
No.
This would be dead on arrival.
Hey man, this program's quality keeps ratcheting lower every single time to properly set people's expectations.
I'm all geared up for my intro here, and then all I see guys start giggling. I'm like, what I miss? Shoot, here.
Let's hear the intro.
We just go like this.
No, we don't need to do it again. Don't.
Stop. All right. Welcome to Three Padres and a Shepherd. Today, we're diving into the topic that's not just science fiction anymore, transhumanism. It's the idea that through technology, genetics, AI, computer chips, we can surpass our human limitations. But what does this mean for our understanding of humanity, the body, sin, and salvation? Is transhumanism a Tower of Babel in digital form? Is it a new form of works righteousness? Or is it a wonderful innovation for mankind? Join us as we explore this most interesting topic. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Morning.
We're all the gates strong this morning.
I'm feeling Noahic today.
You feeling what?
Noahic.
Okay, explain that.
Like Noah. I'm feeling like Noah.
Oh, because of the volume of rain?
Because of the volume of rain. It has been raining for like 2 weeks straight. It is quite damp around here. And our only saving grace in Oaks is that we are in river bottom and it's all sandy soil, so the water drains are pretty quickly, but it's just gross out. It's yucky. Everything's full of water. I don't like it. I know I shouldn't complain about water in July, in North Dakota, because usually it's really, really dry, but I'm complaining.
We got rain yesterday and today. What a glorious gift of God. It was we needed every drop of it. God be praised.
Newdorf, what's new with you up in Bot now?
My mother, Patricia Neuendorf, is visiting this week from southern Indiana. We got to baptize my son, Benji, and she got to be present to witness it. And she has been remarking on the pathetic state of the crops around here compared to where she's coming from in Indiana because of how little rain we've gotten this season.
They also are several weeks ahead of us due to their proximity to the equator.
That's true. The corn in North Dakota has not been knee-high by the 4th of July, I guess you could say.
Well, that is not true where I'm at. It's like way higher than that. It was waist high at least.
As high as an elephant's eye. Because my mom is here, it puts me in mind I'd need to issue an apology from the last recording. I think there were some listeners, chief among them my mother, who were not convinced that I was joking when I prioritized a certain recent franchise over the birth of my son. So I just want to make it crystal clear for all listeners and viewers that the birth of Benjamin Levi Neuendorf is a much more significant event in my life than the release of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. But I am looking forward to The Final Reckoning being available for streaming and purchase so that I can view it in the comfort of my home.
With Benji.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta say, I love that name, Benji. That's awesome.
It sounds like a character in one of your fantasy novels that you like so much.
I don't like fantasy novels.
Tarzan's kind of a fantasy novel.
It has fantasy elements.
It's a documentary.
Okay,
It's a documentary.
Sorry, your fantasy wilderness survival genre. Yeah.
The Tarzan novels literally are a documentary, as is made clear in the opening of the first novel, which you really need to read if you haven't.
Okay, so if you're on an island and you can only choose one, Tom Cruise from Mission Impossible or Tarzan.
Tarzan.
Yeah.
Okay, just we'll just
Knew
clear
that was
that
going to
up.
be.
Okay. Yeah.
By the way,
no hesitation.
No
If you're
hesitation.
fighting international
absolutely not.
terrorists, would you pick Tarzan or Tom Cruise?
Tarzan. He's more superhuman than Ethan Hunt.
No
And, you know,
hesitation.
talking about transhumanism, Ethan Hunt has ascended to godlike status in the Mission Impossible movies. I love the movies; they're great movies, but the characters have to trust in Ethan Hunt. And the thing is, they don't just trust him that he has their best interests in mind, trust him that he won't give up. They have to trust that he can accomplish the mission. So, for instance, at the end of one of the later movies, he's clinging to a tether from a helicopter, and the critical component in stopping a nuclear blast is in the other helicopter. And they have to trust that he can get into the helicopter and then get into the other helicopter and subdue the bad guy and do what has to be done to stop the nuclear blast. And they just they lose contact with him, and they have to put it down to the last second because they know Ethan Hunt will come through. He's God. He's their chief object of trust. With Tarzan, you trust in his mighty thews of steel and his animal instincts, which is much more reasonable, down to earth. So I love Mission Impossible, but Tarzan is closer to my heart. Now, I did want to share, I'm not doing show and tell today, but my daughter has been perplexed by this. And this Sunday, she said, "Is that really supposed to be you?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "It doesn't look very good." And then she said, "But at least you look better than this guy." And I thought, I got to get Lydia watching this video so that she can see that in person, Matt is a very handsome guy. But she admires
my ego there.
She admires these two beards, I think. And Matt's beard is much less evident in this.
Yeah, it's more gray. That's
because he's old.
I'm an old.
You know,
yeah, old.
If it makes you feel
beard.
better, I went to an installation over in Ellendale last Sunday, and the Reverend President Chapoulis preached a fine sermon, and my son afterwards came up to me and he said, "Dad, I really liked that sermon." I said, "Yeah, it was pretty good. What'd you like about it?" He goes, "Well, he gets mad, but it's not like when you get mad when you preach. It's actually good when he does it."
Oh, wow.
So I said, "You know what? You need to go tell President Chapoulis that." So he did. And I thought our good district president was going to fall over laughing. He almost started crying. He was laughing so hard. And I told my son, I know you're not my son, but I'd love to give you a hug. And my son went and walked away.
You know, President Chapoulis does get mad in his sermons, but yeah, it is mad in a very edifying way. His anger brings me closer to God.
Yeah. He preached at St. Paul's, and he came out of the gates, and I've heard him preach many times, and I really appreciate his preaching. And I thought, I'm like looking forward to this. And I heard the sermon at 8:00, so the 10:30, I'm like watching people. He gets in the pulpit, and he just launches. Everyone just like sits back. And, I mean, literally, you could just see that the like a 90-degree angle, and everybody just sits back in their pew like this, and it was fantastic.
Well,
We're not used to good preaching.
One last thing real quick. I had a recent birthday, and my wife has gotten kind of frustrated that I can't keep any plants alive in any of my offices. So she got me some plants that she thinks I could keep alive. And I think they're pretty cute.
There you go.
So these are like transplanted. Transplants already works. It doesn't really work. They're immortal. They'll never die.
Immortal.
Speaking of trans, let's get into our main event.
Yeah.
You know what's going to be great, Bo, is when this gets published, the music is going to be there for everyone, and we're going to look so stupid. But hey, that's kind of par for the course for us, right?
Last time that happened too, and I didn't hear the music, but you guys did, so I had to wait for like a cue like this, and then I was going, I didn't know if I was going when I was going to go, and you just give me a head nod like that, and there we go.
Maybe we should just trust the technology, yeah?
Right.
You should just allow other people to do podcasts.
Okay, so the topic we got is transhumanism. I'll be very, very forthright. When this was chosen, I think this was came from the St. Paul's Elder Board. I don't know if you pushed on this topic or not, but
Probably.
yeah.
I think
So what happened? So just for the context of the listener, what ends up happening is the Elder Board from St. Paul's Lutheran Church selects a topic for the month for St. Paul's, and we select any and all subjects that are out there. So the idea of transhumanism was selected. Then we put that in the newsletter. We're going to be teaching on it, and then we use that information and that kind of context for this Three Padres and a Shepherd. And so when transhumanism was selected, I'm like, I don't know hardly anything about it. And so Bo and I have been talking about it, and this is maybe assuming that other people don't know much about this topic either. It's a really relatively new concept, or even the word itself. So let's just kind of pull the throttle back, and we'll just kind of walk through it. I have some very simple but complex questions that are going to kind of walk us through. We should perhaps define transhumanism first. Okay, so transhumanism, let's define it. Let's start with the trans part.
And if you're thinking of stopping listening now, I think you should stick around. This will be interesting.
Yeah,
we thought it wouldn't be that good, but it is a very interesting topic and very relevant.
You know, a podcast is going off the rails when you have to insist that your podcast is worth listening to. I do think Neuendorf has a good definition of this, though. We were talking a little bit when you two were monkeying around earlier. I really like Neuendorf's definition of transhumanism.
So Neuendorf, unpack this for us and everybody else that's listening.
Okay.
If there's anyone left listening.
Yeah. Your mom and my mom. Let's unpack this. We know that they're listening, okay? Our two listeners.
So, trans is the Latin component for beyond. So, for instance, Transalpine Gaul is that part of Gaul that is across or beyond the Alps. So, for transhumanism, it means you go beyond what it is to be human. And the chief limitation of humanity is death. So, to my mind, transhumanism is, at its root, an attempt to go beyond death. To ascend to immortality. And this is a very ancient quest. I mentioned to Rademeyer before he started, the first emperor of China, when he had conquered the warring states of China and united them in one empire, there was like nothing left for him to do. He had gone as far beyond normal humanity as one could at that time and place. And so the last enemy to be defeated was death, and he sent out emissaries searching for the key to immortality in hopes that he could transcend death. But of course he couldn't. And what he ended up doing was having his terracotta army sculpted and buried in hopes that since he had to go into the afterlife, it would be a better afterlife. He could not transcend humanity. And now all he has is a terracotta army and a miserable existence in hell. That, of course, is just one instance of a sort of universal human quest to transcend humanity and conquer death and gain immortality.
I'm not laughing about this emperor being in hell. I'm just laughing about the way you said it.
I don't mean to trivialize it at all.
No, it's just the way you are. You make me giggle.
Well, okay, alchemy. The main point of alchemy, of course, you want to turn base metals into gold, but alchemists were searching for the Philosopher's Stone, as we all have learned from Harry Potter. And the goal of the Philosopher's Stone is immortality, to transcend humanity. But now, with the advent of modern technology, chiefly computers, we have the most realistic shot yet at actually transcending humanity and conquering death and other human limitations. So, as I understand it, one of the main goals of transhumanism is to upload your consciousness to an inorganic network so that you're no longer constrained to flesh and blood, and you don't have to worry about death anymore.
So just to make sure we understand, the word trans itself it's a Latin word that means beyond, right? Or across or beyond. So you were talking earlier about descending, right? Which would be down. Descending down, right? Ascending
going
up.
down, ascending, going up. Transcending is going beyond.
Going beyond. Okay, so the word trans is beyond human.
Yeah.
So for those listening, trans is beyond human. Okay, so let's move on this, and Brad, I'd love for you to unpack this a little bit. We were talking just briefly before. We're talking about this idea of, can we do something or should we do something? So the question is, let's just say if I want to take a head off of a person and put it on another person, right? Let's just say, to transcend death itself, you take a head off of a person, put it on another. Maybe we can do that. Okay. Science is going to help us understand, can we do something like that? Or can we put a chip in somebody's brain? Can we do these things? But ethics is going to ask the question, should we? Unpack that or fix what I just said there.
Well, what else is there to say, right? We have the ability to do a lot of things. That doesn't mean we should do everything. Like, I could go shoot people next door to the church. I own a gun. I could do that. I'm not going to, because it's a bad idea. And I don't think that this is a fundamentally different distinction in that sense. This is one of those things we theologians complain about a lot, right? That we have the ability through scientific research to do a lot of things to manipulate the world around us, but we don't often stop and ask whether it's a good idea or not. And then we have whole genres of literature that are about the folly of just doing science stuff for just the sake of doing science stuff. I mean, there's a whole franchise called Jurassic Park or Jurassic World now, right? And it's about the folly of doing genetic manipulation and research without any sort of restraints. And my older kids just watched the newest Jurassic World, which they loved because they're kids. And apparently there's some weird mutant T-Rex thing in there, and it's huge and it eats people. And
looks like a rancor.
Yeah, it's like a rancor. I saw a picture of it. They made me look it up on the internet. It's ugly. But, that's the idea, right? Is that we meddle with this stuff and we don't really know what we're doing, and it ends up blowing up in our face. It's also like one of the things, you ever watch the sitcom cartoon Futurama? I really liked Futurama back in my college days. And they have the head museum where they put people's heads in a jar full of fluid and keep them alive. But it's a pretty tortured existence, and they play it for laughs and whatever, and bring in historical characters from, history.
That sounds hilarious.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's really funny. But the thing is that, we could do a full body, transplant, right? But that doesn't keep your brain from deteriorating. It doesn't keep the skull from falling apart. It doesn't actually fix the problem. You're just kicking the can down the road. Longevity is not the same thing as immortality. And then you have all the ethical problems that come with, well, are we going to start like growing bodies because we can clone things now, and then have clones that we're going to lop the heads off of and, still other heads back on there and all this kind of stuff. And there's been how many sci-fi movies and books and articles written with that plot point too. And so I think that on some level, culturally, we're aware that there's lots and lots of perilous things that might come with such technological exploration. But at the same time, that doesn't seem to be dissuading people. Elon Musk, isn't Elon Musk into transhumanism? Isn't that one of his things? Yeah, he's absolutely really into that. A lot of the tech billionaires are way into this because they think that that's their... think that's their way through it. But I think that fundamental question is one that we have to ask. Where is the limit to what we can and should do? We have the ability to do things, and maybe we shouldn't do everything we think we can.
Can I just jump in and say that I love the movie Jurassic Park, one of my very favorite movies, but it annoys me to no end how the character of Ian Malcolm, played by Jeff Goldblum, is so critical of the scientific endeavor. I don't think there's anything wrong with resurrecting dinosaurs. And I dearly hope that in my lifetime we have a park dedicated to woolly mammoths. Living woolly mammoths. But to me...
Now, hold on a minute. We cannot resurrect dinosaurs or woolly mammoths. All we can do is create genetic facsimiles of those things, because we can't actually produce original woolly mammoths. We can only make things that are woolly mammoth-like, descended from modern genetic material.
Good enough.
So, when they have that thing about the dire wolves coming back, they're not real dire wolves. They're dire wolf-like modern wolves, okay?
Fashioning genetic facsimiles of extinct species, to me, is a different endeavor than fundamentally transforming human nature. So you can argue about whether a Jurassic Park would be ethical or not. Certainly, it's a lot more clear cut when you're talking about transhumanism changing what it is to be human.
Well, this is where I think this gets, for me, like there's kind of sort of three camps, three buckets I'd put different technologies and things in. There's one camp where it's just a bad idea, right? You know, cutting off people's heads and sewing them onto other bodies is fraught with all kinds of ethical problems. I don't think we need to go down that road. Trying to upload someone's consciousness, you know, into a computer, it's not going to work because we're not biological computers. We're actually something more than that. You know, you can do all that you want. It's just impossible. We're not programmed in binary, right? On the other hand, there's stuff that's just common sense. Like you lose your arm, you get a prosthesis, you know, that you're not trying to adapt anything. The problem for me is the stuff that's kind of in that gray area between those two poles, where you could have it be a restoration of a lost ability, or maybe it's a little bit more than that. So I'm thinking, like, for example, I believe it's Elon Musk has come up with a technology where paralyzed people can manipulate things on computers and by extension machines attached to them.
Neuralink.
Yeah, Neuralink. You know, that's starting to get in that gray area for me, because on the one hand, if you are a quadriplegic, that might be a very useful technology. On the other hand, if you're a healthy human being and now you want to be able to like summon your car with just thinking about it, this is starting to get into kind of a weird place, you know?
So So that is the hard part, drawing the line. So I mean, we talk about what is transhumanism not. So let's say I've got my heart is failing and I have a heart attack, and then I go in and get a pacemaker. Or I lop off my arm. You said it as a given that if somebody lops off their arm, well, of course they get a prosthetic arm. That's just okay, you know. Or my eyesight is failing and therefore I need glasses. To just say that it's a given that, well, yeah, of course you can get a pacemaker. That's not sinful. That's not bad. That's good. Is that a given? Can we just say that is just a thing and that's fine? Because that line has been crossed 1,000 times over. So, meaning, if man creates these tools that are extensions of the man, meaning a shovel is an extension of the hands, you know, it's easier to dig with a shovel. Well, now all of a sudden I can build a backhoe. That's an extension. That's a mechanical extension that can do a job and that can be automated, can do what a human can do 10 times better through, but it doesn't necessarily raise moral questions, but it's going beyond what is human. Well, we are, let's just say, through doing, it goes beyond our human limitations. So if someone doesn't have the ability to walk, and then you give them ability to walk through a Neuralink, can we just say that's okay without any, he's going beyond what God intended him to do. Granted, he may have fallen because of sin. That's just it. We're in a broken world, but I don't know that we can just grant it as a given that all of this is just good, because sin can enter in if the fear of death is what someone is trying to avoid.
Yeah.
Let me just pause there, just kind of unpack for the listeners what we're saying here, and then let's move on. So, not move on, but continue with what we're saying here. Yeah. Okay. So what Bo is saying is this. Okay. So there is like a shovel, right? We don't have a problem with the shovel. That's just an extension of the arm, or a bicycle is an extension of what? Your legs, right? Or a wheelchair. These are things that are extensions that help us be more productive. But then what you're saying with a pacemaker, okay, so a pacemaker it is technology, right? It is installed into a person, like my dad has a pacemaker, but it's not necessarily, the pacemaker is not necessarily helping the person transcend to like a more improved heart. It's bringing them back to, ground zero, right? And so if I'm here and like right here, and then I have a heart attack, my heart then is what? Deficient, like a -5. The pacemaker is going to bring us back up to what? Normal standard.
I have to butt in here, but I think we need to point out that I think that Bo and Pastor Neuendorf and I are using the word transcend in different ways. Because in a sense, Bo is right. It is a transcending of the human condition to go get a backhoe and dig a basement in an afternoon rather than spending, 7 months doing it by scooping up dirt in your hands.
In your hands,
right?
yeah.
Because even if you were to go get a stick to dig the rocks loose, you have something now that's an extension of your person. You're transcending the human limitation of what dirt I can claw out of the ground with my fingertips, right?
Right.
But I don't think that's the same sense of transcending as we're talking about when we're starting to augment the human body and mind and person.
Yep.
That's a different kind of thing. And I don't think we should equivocate those two things, because even in Scripture, we don't have a problem with technology as things to help minimize the effects of our sins. So Adam and Eve are not condemned for sewing clothes in fig leaves, and God actually gives them better clothes. And yes, that is a sign of Jesus, but that is a technology. And so you see, even in Scripture, like God commands that there be skillful working of metal and fabric in the production of the tabernacle. There needs to be some kind of organized agricultural system to provide the sheep and the bulls and the goats for sacrifices. Right, we have to have animal husbandry and feedlots or whatever, right? And so I mean, technology is not the problem when it helps mitigate some of the effects of sin. And I think we can see technology as a gift from God, a mercy of His to us to help take a little bit of the sting out of sin and death. That being said, it doesn't eliminate sin and death. And even if we go down the road of trying to download my consciousness into a computer, that computer's still going to wear out, and I'm still going to die.
This this book right here, it's about Kalov. This is words written on paper are an extension of the mind that is eternalized through the technology of the written word, and in a way that individual lives on through that technology, and his thoughts and mind are here for us today.
Kalov does not experience the continuation of his thoughts in that book.
Okay.
We as receivers, do experience the extension and permanentization of his thought. Mm-hmm. But as far as he's concerned, that's detached from himself, has gone out there. In fact, sometimes authors will distance themselves from previous writings because their own thought has continued and changed. But if Kalov were to attempt to upload his consciousness to an AI system so that he can continue bestowing his theological wisdom on us through the internet for eternity until the end of the world, that would be veering into transhumanism territory.
And I'm just going to throw that out there. If you do that, you will not actually have Abraham Kalov or whoever else. You will have a computer facsimile of Abraham Kalov or whoever else. It's not the real person. This is one of the things that frustrates me so much, because in Asia, I forget which country, if it was China or Japan, they have the ability, and this is a service you can pay for. You take recordings of your loved one, upload them into a sophisticated AI processing suite, and it will produce a 3D image of that person that you can interact and talk with. And it will give responses in their voice and in the cadence of their speech. This is being hailed in certain quarters as a great thing. It gives you closure, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't, because it's not the real person. It is a computer representation of a person who is not here. It's the same fundamental misstep people make when they say, grandma lives on in your heart. No, she doesn't. She's not there. What you have in your heart is a memory, and that's not grandma.
Have you all read C.S. Lewis's novel, That Hideous Strength, the third book in his space trilogy? You got to read it. It's the perfect book for transhumanism, because it features an organization called the NICE, the National Institute for Coordinated Experiments, which specializes in vivisection and that vivisection is dissecting animals while they're alive. And they want to get beyond the human condition, and particularly they hate anything organic. They want to get to a perfectly inorganic existence. But at the center of the NICE is this head of a sort of mad scientist who was guillotined. They kept his head. They artificially support it. They've lopped off the top of the skull so that the brain has room to expand. It looks like a turban. And they all imagine that this scientist is still present with them through his preserved head. But it turns out he's long gone. What's actually inhabiting this head is a demonic entity. And it turns out the NICE is just Satan's attempt to take over the world.
So maybe we need to. Ta-da!
So if you think you upload your consciousness to AI, it's probably just demons impersonating you.
Okay.
Let's back up a little bit. So where does at a basic level, you talked about, which I believe was the Ming Dynasty, where they were the beginning of that. Wasn't that the guy that? And then you have the quest for the Holy Grail, whether that be Indiana Jones or whoever. The idea of immortality, the idea of living forever, the idea of transcending suffering. What is the base of that? Where does that desire come from, and are any of us free from it?
I think it comes from unbelief, because, of course, unbelief does not recognize that Jesus has made provision for our eternal life with him. If you believe in Jesus Christ, then death for you is a portal to immortality, to blessed life in heaven, where you await the permanent and complete resurrection of your body on the last day, the full restoration of everything that it is to be truly human as God originally intended us. But if you don't believe that, if all you have is this life, then transhumanism is the thing. I guess you have two choices. You can attempt to reconcile yourself to the fact that you're going to cease to exist, or you can try to transcend the cessation of existence. Transhumanism is the refusal to give up and accept de-existence. But once you throw Christian faith into it, transhumanism becomes unnecessary. In fact, not just unnecessary, but anti-necessary. It's directly contrary to the Christian hope.
So could we also say that even in paganism or non-Christian thought, there is a dim shadow or a dim reflection of the idea that man isn't supposed to die, that there is supposed to be some form of immorality achievable? Immortality. What?
We achieve that all the time. That's fine.
Yeah, immortality available to us. That the idea that we are supposed to, a dim reflection of the idea that we are supposed to be eternal.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, as far as I hear this many times where people say, I'm not afraid of death, right? And I've encountered a lot of death in hospitals, and I've been with a lot of absolute pagans, and I'm not afraid of death. And then, guess what? They're afraid of death. I have seen wonderful Christians die with peace, with the peace of Christ. And one of the best was my buddy Vince down in Gwinner. He died with integrity. He died with the hope of Christ. He died proclaiming Jesus and ministering to me. And I'll remember Vince the rest of my life, that he thanked me. And I remember I prayed the Lord's Prayer with Vince, and he was in Fargo, and I had to go back to Gwinner, and he said, "Pastor, just think that's the last time we will pray this prayer together, the Lord's Prayer." And why? Because he knew he was going to die that night. And then when he died, guess what? He's not going to be asking. He's going to have everything's going to be realized for him in eternity. And beautiful, right? But this idea of death, just the fear of death itself. There's actually a really good book too. It's called The Denial of Death. It's a secular book. Fascinating. Not to get us in the ditch too far, but it has a section where it talks all about this idea of us being attracted to the gods, right? Like the Zeus and so forth. And I made the parallel, like how we're attracted to Avenger movies and all these superheroes. And we will actually watch, and I experienced this myself, where you'll watch Superman and you feel invigorated because they're surpassing what? They're transhuman. They're surpassing the limitations of human life and death, and Superman can't die. And you find this relief, this reprieve, that nothing can touch you when you identify with these characters. And this whole idea is that the reason why people were fascinated with these Zeus gods and so forth of the days of old, and which I would say today with Avengers, is it gives us a reprieve from the sting of death, where we can feel invincible, that we'll live forever, that we can surpass the human condition with running or strength or the sting of death itself.
I think you're right about that, but it brings to mind something that I find really interesting. The movie Man of Steel, which introduced Henry Cavill as Superman. If you've gotten a chance to see that.
Excellent.
I really enjoyed that movie. But the thing that set it apart was what made Superman special was not just that he was from the planet Krypton and was strengthened by our atmosphere and sun and so on, but the fact that he wasn't genetically engineered. That in that iteration, the whole Krypton society was driven by scientific guidance, direction, and everyone was genetically engineered. But Superman's parents chose to procreate him in the natural manner.
Natural way, yeah. Yeah.
So in order to leave it up to what they called chance, which of course we would say is the hand of providence directing the human existence. And that's what really made Superman special, was that he was produced naturally with the chance element rather than being directed by the best intentions of advanced intelligence. So I think Man of Steel, while it continued these themes you're talking about, Matt, was also a reaction against transhumanism.
So real quick, let's go back. Just maybe I don't know if we need to, correct me if we don't need to clean this up or not. But we're talking about the augmentation of technology with the human person. I think I like that term that Brad Murray used, to augment technology with the person. So let's just point out. I mean, is there a difference between augmenting let's just say a pacemaker versus augmenting a computer chip, right? I mean, so could we? And I'm gonna set this question up here. Maybe we can knock it over. If I get a pacemaker to bring me back to normal status, right? So my heart is a deficit, -5. I get a pacemaker, it brings me back to normal status, what I was before. So I'm restoring what was lost, versus a chip would help me surpass what I already have. Can we make that distinction, or is that a faulty distinction?
Well, okay. So I think we have to be careful with what we understand normal to be, because if I'm born with a heart defect and have that repaired, my normal is that I have a defective heart. And if I end up having my heart fixed so that it is normal in terms of, where a human being my age should be, I actually have technically augmented myself and moved beyond that. But, so we don't want to make normal subjective, right? We want it to be more objective in the way that we understand it.
Well, there is also, if you're born with a heart defect, it's a defect.
Right.
There's a disorder. There's something wrong.
Right.
Okay, that may be in a sense normal for someone born in this vale of tears in our sinful condition. But nevertheless, we can say there's a discernible ideal of the human design, and you are bringing your heart back in line with that ideal design. But okay, I think we even recognize in sports that there is a certain perversion to going beyond restoration and entering into the territory of augmentation or enhancement.
Like drugs.
Yes. Yep. Performance-enhancing drugs are a primitive form of transhumanism, because and we recognize that, and we don't want it involved in our sportsmanship at all. We recognize that it fundamentally corrupts if we give into it.
So back to the question, which I agree with you, Richard. I think we're dancing around, like, where do we draw the lines? And I guess for me, I think it's helpful to go back and think about what makes an ethical decision ethical. There are 3 components that we have to analyze when it comes to any particular decision that we make for their moral validity. One is our motivation for pursuing that particular course of action.
Yep,
the second thing is the means by which we accomplish that particular course of action. And the third is what our intended result is, because it is possible that, things blow up in our face and we don't mean it to. And so, like if I have the motivation of pursuing some technology to get away from dying in kind of an ultimate sense, not just in the moment, like I treat my cancer so that I don't die from cancer right now, but I know I'm going to die someday, that's not a bad thing. But if I'm pursuing a particular course of action because I think it will put off death inevitably or for a very long period of time or something like that, that's a bad motivation. Or if I use means that harm or hurt other people. Like there was some conspiracy theory thing I saw on the internet where rich people take the blood out of young people and distill it into a concoction. What is the name of that supposed thing? Neuendorf, do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Anyways, they supposedly take the blood and they distill it into some drug, and they have a name for it, and then they give it to the rich and the wealthy because it keeps them young and virile for much longer. That would be incredibly unethical, doing that, right? Or the other one too would be like the intended result. So if my intended result is that I'm just not going to die, then we're pursuing it for the wrong reason, which also ties back with motivation. And I think that helps clear up a lot of these cases, because something like a pacemaker is not to put off death permanently. It's just to make me not die right now from my heart quitting. Right.
But that's good. Agreeing with what you're saying there. Something as simple as a blood transfusion at the end of life, or fluids for that matter. If you're getting those things because you are a complete pagan who has no thought process of the afterlife or nothing to do with Christ, and you solely want to extend your life every minute that's possible, something as simple as that can be sin. Something as simple as just using those technologies purely for the sake of extending to avoid death, or because you hate God we were just talking about Ozzy Osbourne just died. He was afraid of death, no doubt. He had no comfort in the afterlife. My guess is. But I would say that someone like that would try and put it off as long as possible, and in rebellion against what the result of sin actually is, death.
When I turned 40, I'm 46 now. When I turned 40, people were like, happy birthday. How's it feel to be 40? And the church did all black balloons, and they had a wheelchair, and I had to sit in the wheelchair, and they wheeled me in, and they had a cake. It was all black, the cake, and it was fantastic. And then they had these cones and caution signs, old man coming through, and it was wonderful. But when I reflected on that, I told people, I said 40. The average lifespan of Americans is right around 76 to 80. So I said, I'm half dead.
Yeah.
And the amount of reactions I got by saying I'm half dead, it was repulsed, right? Half dead. And somebody's, what, you're half dead? I said, yeah, just think about it. You're 3/4 dead.
Oh, you're 7/8.
Yeah, but there's a sense where, why can we say that? I don't want to be flippant about death, but no, I am half dead, and I'm, now I'm over half dead. And what does that mean? That means that every day is a day that I could potentially die, or Jesus could come back, which then crystallizes the moment that every moment and every day, every breath is a wonderful gift. A gift to love my wife, a gift to love my parish, a gift to confess Christ, rest in the gifts that have been given.
So that reminds me, have you heard the Russian birthday song?
No,
happy
but I want to.
birthday, oh happy birthday, pain and sorrow and despair, people dying everywhere. Happy birthday, oh happy birthday, one step closer to the grave. Think of all the food you'll save. Happy birthday, oh happy birthday. There we go.
There we go.
Gets you in the zone.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, I think I'm gonna change my birthday song to that every year.
Well,
Okay.
my son yesterday found a feather, and it got him thinking. He asked me if he had enough feathers, could he so arrange the feathers on his own arms that if he moved his arms the right way, he'd be able to fly. So I got to share with him the centuries-long history of men attempting human flight, largely through mimicry of birds. And we talked about airfoils and how the Wright brothers finally succeeded in bringing us flight. But that got me thinking, what's the difference between modifying a human body so that body becomes capable of flight versus developing a flight-capable craft that humans can board so that we fly? I think there is a fundamental difference. One is you never identify yourself with the jet that you're flying across the country with. It's a tool. It's outside of you. It's not changing your nature. It is giving you an opportunity that previous generations didn't have. But in that way, it's parallel to the backhoe or whatever technology might be. But if you were to modify your own body so that you became capable of flight, that would be changing the nature that God created in you. And it wouldn't be bringing you back up from a state of disorder to order. It would be fundamentally changing how God designed you. And of course, with transhumanism, the main thing you're getting at is the mind. Elon Musk wants to alter your mind so that you become capable of faster thought so that you can communicate with rapidly advancing AI.
So we have to almost separate. So uh, the initial push of the neuro implant would be to the slowest part of technology interface between man and human is the actual input, the typing on a computer, getting what's in here to what's on there so I can get back what it has to say. So Neuralink, you're talking about the prosthetic leg or a paralyzed individual. They're trying to get information outputs from his mind into a computer to control some prosthetic legs or to control his own legs for that matter. And I think that's actually been achieved. In China, I thought I saw something of that nature. But so would we have a moral qualm with me just saying that I want a neuro implant so that I can more effectively have input into my computer? But
So I'm
then
happy to be disagreed with, but in my view, that if that's what your goal is, that is parallel to other forms of medical technology because it's bringing you from a state of disorder to order. But of course, the technology developed to help the paraplegic is ripe for development beyond that goal.
Okay.
the only idea of doing it with a paraplegic is we don't have moral qualms with making someone work. But the end goal is not to make people walk; it's
Well,
immortality.
let's
Right.
take a step back and do a parallel example with your shovel. Okay.
Okay.
So I have a shovel. I can use that shovel to dig a hole, and that hole might be a good thing because it could be a well, it could be a garbage pit, it could be a place where I bury my family dog. But I'm going to do some productive, good thing with the shovel. Or I could take the shovel and turn around and smack Richard in the head and put him in the hole. Right?
Right.
That would be a bad thing, and I would be using that piece of technology for immoral ends. And so, my point is that when it comes to technology of whatever sort, even if it's weird and exotic, it has potential applications that are beneficial and potential applications that are not beneficial. And the task of the theologian and the ethicist is to kind of draw that line and make that, division so that we know what we can do with something and what we shouldn't do with something. So, for example, your Neuralink, we could use that to give the paraplegic a chance at moving his body again. Or we could use it to make a man, sync with a computer so that he doesn't have to remember anything. It's all stored in, some data bank somewhere in Ellendale,
Right,
North Dakota.
No, I'm sure that Elon Musk would love to achieve immortality, but have you all heard his main stated motivation for wanting to augment humanity with
No.
technology? It's so he's scared of AI, and I think it's wise to be scared of AI. But the basis of his fear of AI is that as artificial intelligence progresses, it will be thinking at such a rate that communicating with a human will be like us communicating with a tree. Because trees do communicate, they just communicate over a very long time frame. So he's scared that AI will get bored of humanity and will view us as the moral equivalent to trees. So what Elon Musk...
now you're bringing up a whole nother can of worms, which is it possible for artificial intelligence, which is a intelligence simulation,
Yeah.
to
I don't think
actually
it is.
develop sentience and have motivations and morals and get
I don't think
bored
that
and
is
things like
possible.
that. I don't think so either. I
and
think it's overblown.
To the extent that AI would ever be conscious, it would be conscious because a consciousness has inhabited it. Maybe demonic entities are making use of it. But he doesn't recognize that distinction. He thinks that AI can and will become sentient. And a lot of this comes from a philosophical despair over explaining consciousness. So, for instance, I read this book by Daniel Dennett, who's one of the militant atheists, one of the four horsemen of the non-apocalypse, together with Richard Dawkins and the other guys. So Daniel Dennett wrote this book, Consciousness Explained. And it's an amazing book. And it really goes into how the human mind works. And it does explain a lot. But what it doesn't explain is who is experiencing this thing called consciousness. All right, I know you've explained to me how the mind works, how the brain operates, but you haven't explained who is it that's having this experience. And that's the so-called hard problem of consciousness that philosophy cannot grapple with. And those philosophers who take the problem of consciousness seriously have theorized all sorts of ways that consciousness might arise. And I think the most popular view now is that consciousness is an emergent property of any system. So a computer is conscious because it has attained a certain degree of complexity. Your toothbrush is conscious, but on a very, very, very base level. The universe is conscious. The only reason we're conscious is that we have brains that are functioning. So by that view, an AI would become conscious, and that's Elon Musk's view.
The ancients talked about this. There's this really old idea called pantheism, right? That God is the universe, and this is just a more sophisticated version of that. And it goes with another stupid idea, which is abiogenesis, that life just spontaneously arises under the right conditions, which, of course, we've never seen consciousness spontaneously materialize, and we've never seen life spontaneously materialize. And yet, this is the best we can do. It's the most unscientific, supposedly scientific explanation I've ever heard in my life.
Well, Elon Musk's fear is that AI will become conscious and will get bored with humanity. And so he wants humanity to augment itself so that a human mind can keep up with AI and communicate with it and help to keep it within bounds for the sake of humanity.
So there's two things here. First off, that you're arguing about AI becoming conscious, or at least the perceived consciousness, but who's actually experiencing that consciousness? Those who would be involved in science would like to make man purely mechanical, that man has buttons, or man's mind or man's consciousness has buttons that are pressed, and if we just press the right buttons, you have that individual. And back to Brademeyer's point is that you don't actually have a woolly mammoth. That's not a woolly mammoth. That's not a consciousness. That's not the thing you're saying it is. Even though it may think it's the thing you're saying it is not. It's programmed to have a consciousness. There's two things in that. First off, what a wonderful apologetic for that intelligence needs a designer, and that it can't arise spontaneously. But the thing that we can't do is put a soul into something that is made eternal by science, meaning we are not mechanical beings, but rather created by God with a body and soul. And when our body dies, our soul leaves it. And that, even if you have that transhuman, that beyond human, that consciousness of mine through Neuralink plugged into a computer, and it may seem like I'm standing there talking to you, and that's for sure, that could happen, and probably will happen, that just through AI we'll be able to mimic people from videos found on the internet, to where you think that you believe that person's standing there, but that isn't that person. That soul, that we're comprised of a body and a soul, and the body is not a purely mechanical. It has to be thought of as a purely mechanical thing in order, if we press the right buttons, we can keep this thing going. But that isn't the way that Scripture speaks of creation of man.
Well, and just to rain on everybody's parade, so let's just pretend for a minute that you could download your mind into a computer and live there perpetually. There's this wonderful thing, that comes at the end of the world, which is, in fact, the end of the world. And at some point, the computer systems will fail. The universe is going to die, right? Yep. Whether you go with the whole entropy unto universal cold thing, or the big crunch, or whatever theory you have as a secularist on this, doesn't matter. You're going to die. It might be 10 billion years from now, but you're still going to die.
Yeah, I've thought of the premise for maybe a science fiction short story that's based on the assumption that the materialist assumptions about the universe, where the only way to perpetuate existence is time travel, because you have to wait until the universe is about to die, then you travel back to the beginning of the universe. So then, but what happens when you've run out of multi-billion year cycles of going through the universe, and you've now occupied every space in the universe? Eventually, the universe is not infinite. Eventually, if enough quadrillion billion years have gone by, eventually you're going to have to confront the reality of your own mortality. There's no escaping it. Ultimately.
What a horrifying universe, entirely of Chris Neuendorf's, right?
Yes.
It's interesting though too, is like we're describing this. I mean, this is a whole different can of worms, but tied into it. this idea of immortality, and you see this in sci-fi movies, and there's was it Highlander, or there's an old 1990s flick on this. This guy was immortal, and everyone's like, oh, like lucky, right? And he saw it as a curse.
Mm-hmm.
He saw it as an absolute curse to see all the bloodshed and all the war and all the struggles, and have to see the cycle repeat over and over and over. And
Lose
this is
all of
something
his
that-
loved ones every generation.
Yeah, and this is something where I think there is. I mean, it's okay since I'm over half dead right now. I've seen this pattern enough times in humanity. Like, I have people come in for premarital or marital counseling and so forth. It's like, oh, let me explain to you what's going on. Well, how do you know? I'm like, well, I've seen it so many times that nothing's new. I know exactly what's going on. Let me explain it to you. And I look in our society, and I look at scripture. You look at all these things. It's like, man, this repetitive motion of the old Adam, the sinful nature, doing the same old things over and over and over and over again. This idea of having to live forever and losing my loved ones and losing my friends and just seeing this repeat over and over and over. It's like Groundhog Day, right? Over and over and over. That is despairing, So there's a catch-22 to immortality.
Well, the idea, you talk about all of this science, all of this, whether it be transhumanism or just, like say the pacemaker, maybe we need to come up with a different word for that. That's just science done to, but basically long and short of it, all of it is an attempt to return to Eden. We all have this idea that this world that we're in is broken. There's something wrong with it. And we're looking to alleviate suffering and elongate our lives with the alleviation of suffering. That was another, I'm going to go on. Anyway, we're looking to alleviate suffering and reduce the curse of sin and the result. And the thing is that we're looking for our own solution to that in attempting to play or be God, where God did provide the solution for that for us already.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
And it's found in the man Christ. It's found in what he has done and what he will do.
I'm reminded of Luther in his Genesis commentary. It's really fun to read. He says that something to the effect that man has a body stronger and faster than the animal, stronger than a bear, faster than a cheetah, eyes like an eagle, and so forth. Since he had dominion. Yeah. So that Luther says that Adam had this supernatural power. So all these powers you see with all the Avengers, Adam and Eve possessed that, and then because of the fall, the infection of sin itself marred that original image. But then, to what Bo was saying, we will transcend the human condition as is right now, infected by sin itself, at the great eschaton, the great resurrection, when we will be raised immortal, without our renewed 2.0 bodies. Not going to have glasses, not going to have high cholesterol. I mean, you're going to have, all these things will be restored. So there is a sense that we will transcend the sinful condition right now at the great resurrection, which echoes back again exactly what Bo was saying, that we're all striving to get back to Eden.
It'll be restored in the right way by our Creator.
Right.
In the way meant for our blessing.
We won't
if we attempt to do it on our own, it will ultimately result in curse.
This is one of my favorite tropes.
Human will be human. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite tropes in sci-fi, is that some culture does this, and then at the end they become grotesque, semi-robotic, disgusting creatures that are sub-sentient, And it comes, this is like the Borg in Star Trek, or the what do you call it, the Adeptus Mechanicus, in Warhammer 40K. Like, you don't want to be that. They live for a long time, but they're gross. You don't want to be that. And it's funny to me that we somehow know this, even as secularists, that this is not going to end well. And yet at the same time, we try to convince ourselves as a society that we can just manage our way right out of sin and death.
To me, one of the great biblical parables of human limitation is the bronze serpent. So I've been talking about this with my kids for the last few nights. The Israelites are being killed by these fiery serpents in the wilderness. And they asked Moses, pray to God to remove the serpents. And he prays to God, but God won't remove the serpents. Instead, he has Moses erect the bronze serpent in the wilderness. And they still have the serpents, they're still bitten, but in the midst of that suffering, they look at the bronze serpent, and at least they don't die, they live. And Jesus says, As the bronze serpent was lifted up in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. So we are still beset by sin and death. We look at Jesus by faith in him, and we don't die. That is, we still have eternal life. But we're still in the condition of limitation. Part of being a Christian is recognizing we don't transcend our humanity. We don't overcome death in this life. We are subjected to certain divinely imposed limitations, and we need to live in those limitations. But in those limitations, we look to Christ through faith, and we know that he will get us to the ultimate destiny prepared for us by God for our blessing.
And I think it's worth repeating, even if we can do a lot of these things the transhumanists want to, we're really not overcoming the finitude that is to be a human being. Yeah. You are still going to be subject to death and decay and sin and limitation. And even if I could make myself Superman, Superman still dies. That's just the way it's going to be. There's only one solution for death, and that's Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone, on this. Man, it's been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us on Three Padres and a Shepherd as we face a world racing towards synthetic upgrades and digital dreams. We remember that our true hope isn't found in escaping our humanity, but in the one who took on human flesh to redeem it. Until next time, may the Lord bless and keep you.